You remember how it always started the same way. Not with the clang of pans, not with the oven clicking to life, but with a soft rustle, the sound of fabric being untied from a hook. That apron. Before a single onion was chopped, before water boiled or hands were washed, Mom would reach for that faded flower-stitched apron hanging behind the pantry door. She didn't even look at it, just reached, tied, and moved. Like muscle memory, like ritual, like the day didn't really begin until that apron was on. The string wrapped around her back in one fluid motion, the knot always fast, centered, confident. And once it was tied, something in the room shifted, almost like the kitchen took a breath and said, "Okay, she's here now." The apron was never pristine. It had spots, folds, tiny tears in the seams. But she never got a new one. Maybe she had others tucked somewhere in a drawer. Oh, but this was the one. The everyday one. The one that could take flour steam, sweat, spaghetti sauce, and grief, and still show up the next morning. And she wore it. Like it was armor. Not the kind for battle, but the kind that said things will get done. You'll be fed. This home still works. You never really noticed the moment she put it on. Not when you were young. It just was. 1 second she was Mom in a t-shirt. The next she was Mom in command. And the whole house adjusted its rhythm to her steps. That apron meant it was time for things to happen. Pancakes, homework, groceries, being unpacked, last-minute school projects. It was the backdrop to every real moment in the house. Sometimes you'd walk into the kitchen groggy-eyed on a Saturday morning, and she'd already be halfway through whisking batter. The radio low in the corner, coffee percolating, bacon crisping in a pan that had been around longer than you. And she'd glance over her shoulder, give a half smile, and say, "Sit, sweetheart. It's almost ready." You didn't realize it then, but that apron, it was part of her voice. It wiped tears, it wiped counters, it held things you forgot, spoons, cough drops, a note from your teacher she never did reply to. Sometimes she'd dry her hands on it as she leaned in to hug you, and you'd wrinkle your nose at the smell soap onions, maybe a little lemon. But now, you'd give anything to smell that again. And you know what's funny? You never saw her put it on slowly. There was no ceremony, no thought. Just on it went like a breath she'd been holding all morning, as if tying that string behind her back connected her to every mother who came before, and every task she didn't have time to list. It wasn't an accessory, it was her. Even now, years later, you catch glimpses of it in places that don't make sense, in the way you fold napkins, in the smell of cinnamon in late fall, in that odd moment when you tie your own apron and feel like someone else's hands are guiding yours. You stop sometimes when that happens, and you remember, not just the apron, but the feeling it brought, that Mom was in control, that the day had structure, that everything would somehow be okay. It's strange what we remember, not the big birthdays or perfect dinners, but the way she adjusted the strap around her neck, the loose thread she never fixed, the hum in her throat as she moved from stove to sink to table, orchestrating a quiet kind of magic. And it all started with that soft rustle, that tug, that tie, that apron. You ever think about how that apron never got washed right away? It would hang there next to the back door, maybe on a hook that wobbled just a bit. Stained a little damp, folded across itself like it had stories to keep warm. and nobody touched it. Not even her. Not until the next day. Because it wasn't just dirty. It was used. It had served. It had done its job. And it deserved to rest. There's something about the way fabric holds a memory. That apron with its old floral pattern or maybe checkered squares could have been just another piece of cloth. But it wasn't. Not to you. Because it touched everything. Thanksgiving stuffing, birthday cakes, sticky summer pies that left the kitchen smelling like warm sugar and late July, hands wiped during sick nights, crumbs brushed away before anyone else woke up. That apron lived a life, and in it, she lived too. It had a pocket. You remember that? Not fancy, not big, just enough to hold a folded tissue, a safety pin, a clothespin, a penny someone found under the couch. Sometimes you'd find little surprises in there when she wasn't around, bits of hard candy, a measuring spoon, a thread spool with only 3 loops left. You once asked her why she always used the same one, and she just shrugged. Fits me, does the job. But you knew. It wasn't about the fit. It was about the feeling. When she had it on, she didn't hesitate. She moved like the kitchen knew her, like the drawers slid open for her, like the oven preheated itself just out of respect. You remember watching her from the doorway sometimes, not helping, not talking, just watching. She'd be stirring something, shoulder shifting with the motion hips, swaying ever so slightly to music you couldn't hear. Sometimes she'd hum, not a song, just a note that belonged to her alone. And the apron moved with her, soft and shore-like. It knew the dance by heart. There was a power in it, not the kind that shouts or stands tall, the quiet kind, the real kind. She didn't need applause, didn't want credit. She just needed her space, her tools, and that apron. It's strange, isn't it? The things that made her strong were never loud. That's probably why you didn't notice it back then. You think now about all the times she had it on when you were too busy to care. When you slammed the door on your way out. When you didn't say thank you. When you forgot to look back. She still wore it, still tied it on, still fed you, still waited up, and the apron never held it against you. Maybe that's what makes it so heavy now in memory. Not because it was beautiful, not because it was hers, but because of how normal it was. Because she wore it even when no one was watching. And now you're the one standing in a kitchen some mornings. Maybe with your own apron, maybe not. Maybe just with a dish towel slung over your shoulder and a list in your head. And sometimes, without meaning to, you move the way she did. You stir the same way. You hum the same hum. You find yourself reaching into your own pocket for nothing in particular, and the moment lands like a feather. You pause, you smile, and you miss her, even if she's still here, even if she's just down the road, even if she's been gone for years, because that apron, it's still tied to something deep inside you, and no amount of washing could ever take that out. You ever catch yourself doing something and think this is exactly what Mom used to do? Not on purpose. Not because you meant to mimic her, but because something in your body remembered, something in your hands. Maybe it's the way you hold a spoon tilted just right when scraping the last bit from a bowl, or how you tap a knife twice on the counter before setting it down, or how you wipe the edge of a plate with the corner of your shirt without thinking. Those little motions. Tiny rituals, passed down not by instruction, but by osmosis. And more often than not in your mind, she's still wearing that apron. She's there in the corner of your memory arms, folded brow slightly raised, watching you measure too generously or forget to preheat. But she's not judging. She's just amused. Like she knows you'll figure it out. Like she's still in the room, somehow wrapped around the air, folded into the smell of something browning. Sometimes you open a drawer in your kitchen, your own kitchen, and see the old one still there, folded, worn, faded. You don't wear it, not because you don't want to, but because there's something sacred about it now. It's not an apron anymore. It's a memory, pressed into cotton, humming softly. Funny how things we once took for granted become almost holy when we miss them. The apron she wore to cook with one hand while balancing a phone call with the other. The one she tied on while dabbing lipstick before company arrived. The one that smelled like every holiday, every Tuesday, every thunderstorm night, when dinner came from whatever was left in the fridge. It didn't matter what was cooking. If the apron was on, there was care in the air. You start to realize now, it wasn't about the food. It was never just the meals. It was the gesture of it all, the preparing, the remembering who liked what, the timing it, so everything hit the table warm. The eat while it's hot, that meant I love you more than you know. And the apron was the flag of that quiet love, raised each day without ceremony. You think about how little you knew back then, how often you assumed the food just appeared, how you thought she just liked cooking, how you didn't notice her sitting down last or sometimes not at all. But now you see it clearer. Now you know the apron wasn't about making dinner. It was about making life livable. You see people now with clean kitchens and spotless hands. You see videos of 10-minute meals and shiny countertops. And you wonder, where did the mess go? Where's the apron with the one stubborn stain? Where's the flour handprint on the hip? Where's the evidence that someone showed up in that kitchen day after day with love? Maybe it's still there. Maybe it's just quieter now. But part of you misses when love was obvious, when it hung from a neck, wrapped around a waist, and moved like music from stove to sink to table. So no, maybe you don't wear yours. Maybe you never found one that felt quite right. Or maybe you wear it every single day without knowing it. Not as fabric, but as patience, as care, as instinct, as that quiet voice inside you that says, "Dinner's almost ready, sweetheart." Even if no one's home yet. Even if the table stays empty, because the apron stays on. Somewhere in you, it always does. You know what's strange? You can barely remember what it looked like in perfect detail. You might not even know where it ended up. But somehow you remember how it felt. The way the fabric softened in the middle from years of wear. The way the strap curled a little at the edge. The faint line where it had been ironed so many times it just stayed that way. That feeling of leaning in for a hug and pressing your cheek against it, still warm from the stove, still smelling like dinner and soap and safety. That's what's stuck. Sometimes when the house is quiet, you find yourself staring out the window, and that's what comes to you. Not words, not lessons, just a presence. A memory not tied to a moment, but to a texture. And maybe that's why grief surprises us. Because we don't just miss people. We miss the details we didn't know we loved. You remember the days she wore it, even when no one was coming over. when the only guests were laundry and leftovers, when the only sound in the house was the hum of the fridge and the tick of a kitchen clock. And still she tied it on. She didn't wait for an occasion. She didn't dress for applause. She just showed up. And the apron was part of how she did it. You think now about what else that apron witnessed. Not just cooking. It caught the tears she wiped away when she thought no one was looking. It held her hands when she stood quietly unsure what to do next. It heard the sighs she let out between chores, between years, between disappointments she never named. It saw joy, too. Laughter over spilled batter. Dancing in the kitchen when her favorite song came on. A kiss on the cheek from your dad while she was elbow deep in dough. That apron held it all. You wonder sometimes how much of her was sewn into that cloth. How many feelings she never said out loud, but folded into napkins, tucked into lunch boxes, stirred into sauces. There were times she seemed so quiet, so ordinary. You didn't realize until later that she was doing 100 things at once, inside and out. And maybe that's why the apron mattered, because it was the one visible thing that showed she was in the middle of it all. Now, years later, you look around your own home. Maybe you've got your own rituals, your own way of folding dish towels, loading the dishwasher, cracking eggs into a pan. Maybe you catch yourself saying something she used to say in the exact same tone, and you laugh. Or maybe you stand at your kitchen sink, tired, and whisper, "How did she do it?" And the answer doesn't come. But the memory does. And in that moment, she's there. Not in body, not even in voice, but in the way the room feels warmer than it should. Like someone turned on a light just for you. You reach into a drawer, maybe, and there it is. Folded, faded, still hers. You don't put it on. Not yet. But you hold it for a second longer than you meant to. And it holds you right back. There were days when she didn't wear it. You remember that, too. Those rare mornings when she stayed in her robe a little longer. When breakfast came from a box instead of a pan. When the kitchen was quieter, the radio off the sink empty. And even though you didn't have the words back then, you felt it. Something was different. The air wasn't tense, just still. Like even the house was waiting for her to tie that apron on and say without saying it, "All right, let's get going again." You didn't realize in those moments that she was tired. Not the kind of tired you shake off with coffee. The kind of tired that comes from being everything for everyone every day. And yet even then she found her way back to the hook behind the door. To the knot she could tie with her eyes closed. To the thing that made her feel like herself again. The apron wasn't magic, but it was a signal, not just to you, to her. You think now about how we all have something like that. Some piece of comfort we reach for when the day feels too sharp. A sweater, a song, a recipe, a mug with a chipped handle. For her it was that apron. She didn't put it on to impress anyone. She put it on to anchor herself, to say, "This is what I know how to do. This is where I am strong." And sometimes that's all we need. It's strange how things like that live in the corner of your memory. Not center stage, not the headline, but quietly, faithfully, always there. You can't remember your locker combination from high school, but you remember the way the apron's pocket sagged a little on one side. You remember how it moved when she turned quickly, the hem flaring out for just a second. And maybe most of all, you remember the way she looked in it, Not glamorous, not polished, but present, alive in the task, rooted in the doing. You didn't say it then. Of course you didn't. Who says thanks for wearing that apron today, Mom? It made me feel safe. No one. But you felt it. Like background music. Like the low hum of love that didn't need a spotlight. And now, as you look back, you realize she was giving more than meals, more than chores. She was giving you a rhythm to life, a pattern of care, and the apron that was the uniform of someone who never stopped showing up. So maybe now when you catch yourself folding laundry the way she did, or cooking something without looking at the recipe, or humming while wiping down the counter, that's her. Not just in memory, but in movement, in rhythm, in the quiet ways you love other people. Because the truth is, you don't have to wear her apron to carry what it meant. You just have to keep doing the small things with heart, with patience, with care, just like she did. And when you do, even if no one else sees it, she does. Somewhere. Somehow, she does. There was always something else she was doing while wearing it. She wasn't just cooking. She was talking on the phone with a cord stretched all the way to the pantry. She was checking your forehead for a fever with the back of her hand. She was writing a grocery list on an envelope because she couldn't find any paper. She was scolding the dog, helping with homework, reminding someone to grab their jacket, all without missing a beat in the kitchen. The apron moved with her like a second skin. And you were just there, watching, soaking it in without knowing you were. You sat at the table with your cereal, or leaned against the counter with a cup of juice, or stood in the hallway waiting for something, maybe nothing at all. And she moved through it all like a quiet song you didn't realize had words until years later. There were stains she never tried to scrub out. She'd glance down at one and say, "That's from when your cousin dropped the whole casserole." And she'd laugh, a soft, shoulder-shaking laugh that seemed to say, "It's okay. Life happens. We clean up and move on." She didn't try to keep it spotless. She kept it real. That apron was a map, and every spot was a stop along the road of raising a family. You remember the times she wiped her eyes with the hem, or dabbed flour on your nose just to make you laugh, or held out the edge so you could spit out something you didn't like. Not glamorous, but that's not what mattered. What mattered was that she was there, fully, every day, and that apron was the proof. Now in your own kitchen you look around and wonder how she did it all. You try to juggle half as much and end up with dishes piled and toast burnt and coffee cold. You think, did she ever feel behind? Did she ever want to just sit down? Of course she did. But she kept going, with that apron, with those hands, with that quiet, steady love. There's a kind of dignity in repetition, in doing the same thing every day, not for praise, not for thanks, but because it's needed, because it matters, because someone depends on it, even if they don't realize they do. That was her, and that was the apron. Not dramatic, not grand, but consistent, comforting. True, you don't need to frame it, or preserve it in glass. It already lives in your memory, stitched between gestures and scents and sounds you didn't know you'd miss. And sometimes when the house is quiet, you can almost hear her. Not her voice, but her presence, in the way you stir, in the way you wipe your hands, in the way you make something warm for someone else without saying a word. And if you could tell her now, you'd say, I didn't get it then, but I do now. It's strange how something so ordinary becomes the thing you remember most. You've forgotten so many other details, the brand of cereal she bought, the wallpaper pattern in the hallway, the make of the old microwave that always sparked a little. But the apron, that's still clear. You can see it now, can't you? Hanging from the back of the door, limp from use one corner, always a little curled, still holding the shape of her hands, still echoing the rhythm of her days. It wasn't fancy, it wasn't fashionable, but it was hers. And maybe that's why you never dared to wash it yourself after she stopped wearing it. Because what if the scent faded? That barely there mixture of detergent and garlic and coffee and thyme. That scent that didn't belong to any one product or season. It just was her. Not her perfume. Not her soap. Just the warm, lived-in air that followed her like a soft shadow. You found it one day stuffed in a drawer. Maybe during a spring cleaning you didn't want to do. It surprised you. You hadn't thought about it in a while. But there it was. Folded once, tucked away like it still had work to do. You held it, didn't say anything, just stood there with the fabric in your hands, the weight of it somehow heavier than it should be. It didn't cry out, didn't beg to be remembered, but it remembered you. You didn't put it on, couldn't, not that day. It felt too full, too sacred. But you didn't fold it away again either. You laid it gently across a chair, left it there like it might get up and move on its own. And in that moment you felt her again. Not in some dramatic, ghostly sense. Just in the stillness, in the hush, in the way the afternoon light caught the edge of the hem and made it glow like something holy. It's funny how the older you get, the more you return to the small things. You don't chase big meaning anymore. You just want to feel connected to a moment, to a memory, to a person who once stood in a kitchen and made everything okay over and over and over again. And the apron, it's that connection. Not a relic, not an artifact. Just a piece of everyday magic that kept a house warm and a family whole. So you keep it. Of course you do. Maybe you hang it near your own kitchen now. Maybe it's still in that drawer, but you know where it is. Because it's not just hers anymore. It's part of you. Some nights, when the world feels too loud, too fast, too digital, too much, you find yourself drawn back to the quiet hum of that kitchen, to the soft clink of utensils in a drawer, to the gentle hiss of something simmering, to the image of her standing at the stove with her back just slightly curved and the apron strings tied in a bow that always came loose. And you miss it. Not just her, not just the food. You miss the way she loved without needing you to notice. Because the truth is, she didn't need a spotlight. She didn't ask for one. Her love was background music, the kind that fills the room without ever begging for attention. And the apron. It was the stage she never stood on, but never left either. It held everything she didn't say out loud, the encouragement, the worry, the pride, the fatigue, all tucked into the seams, all stitched in silence. You think now about how easy it is to forget that kind of love. We talk so much about the grand gestures, the big birthdays, the big vacations, the dramatic I love you moments. But real love, The kind that stays with you for decades. It looks like an apron with one broken strap. It smells like biscuits at 5:45 a.m. It sounds like someone humming while folding your sweatshirt just the way you like it. And maybe you didn't say thank you enough. Maybe you rolled your eyes when she insisted on packing a lunch. Maybe you thought she was overdoing it, fussing too much, hovering. But now, when you're the one remembering where everything goes, when you're the one wiping counters and stirring soup and keeping the house from unraveling, you realize she wasn't hovering. She was holding everything, and somehow still making it feel easy. So you forgive yourself for not noticing sooner. She would have anyway. She probably already did, because that's what she always did, forgave you before you even knew what to be sorry for. And she kept moving, kept showing up, kept wearing that apron even on the days her heart was heavy. Because love didn't stop just because she was tired. You sit now, maybe in your own kitchen, and you remember. You close your eyes and imagine the rustle of fabric, the way she reached behind her back to tie the strings, the slight twist she always gave at the waist to get it snug, the way it settled on her like it was made for her, and maybe in a way it was, not made in a factory, not picked off a shelf, made from the rhythm of her life, a garment shaped by care, worn thin by love, and somehow still here, still hanging in the quiet corners of your memory, still saying, "You're doing okay, sweetheart. I've got you," because that's what the apron always said, even without words. You wonder sometimes if your own kids, or maybe your grandkids, will remember something like that about you. Not a speech, not a rule, not some photo you posed for, but something small, worn, used daily, not precious because it was rare, but because it was always there. A towel you always had over your shoulder, a certain pan you reached for every time, the way you folded laundry with that one corner flipped just so. Will they remember it? Will they miss it, even if they never noticed it at the time? You hope so. Not because you need to be remembered, but because you know now how much the little things matter. You know how they shape a home, how they anchor people, how they whisper, "You are safe, you are loved," even when I'm too tired to say it out loud. You think about that apron again, the way it made her visible even when she was quiet, the way it gave weight to her presence without drama, without demand. Sometimes you still reach for it, even now. Not physically, maybe, but in your mind, in your habits, in your own way of loving. You catch yourself stirring the pot a little slower, tidying the kitchen in that quiet, deliberate rhythm she had, putting out napkins even when it's just you at the table. You realize it's not imitation. It's not nostalgia either. It's inheritance, not the kind written in a will, not something stored in a box, but something passed down through repetition, through everyday moments that became sacred without anyone noticing. You think about the way she held that kitchen together, with one hand on a spoon and the other on 1,000 invisible threads, and somehow she never let anything fall apart. Maybe it was the apron, maybe it was her, maybe they were the same thing in the end. Now the world moves faster, more noise, more alerts, fewer quiet kitchens, fewer aprons, but that doesn't mean the love is gone. It just means we have to choose to remember it, to bring it forward, to wear it in our own way. You stand at your sink, Evening light falling in just like it used to back then. And you wonder, what do they see when they look at you? Do they feel safe? Do they feel seen? Do they feel fed? Not just their stomach, but their spirit. And you smile, because maybe, just maybe, you've become someone else's apron. Not perfect, not polished, but present, consistent, softened by years, stitched with love. Tonight the house is quiet, the kind of quiet that used to settle in after dinner when the dishes were done, the stove wiped clean, and the last light in the kitchen glowed like a candle left burning, just for comfort. You walk through the room slowly, not because you have to, but because that's how these moments are meant to be moved through. Soft, slow, with reverence. You pass the chair she used to sit in. You glance at the drawer where her apron used to be folded, and you feel something settle around you. Not sadness, not even nostalgia, just presence. You don't need the apron in your hands tonight. You don't need to see it to feel it, because it lives in everything now, in the way you wipe your hands, in the way you plate food with just a little more care than necessary, in the way you hum to yourself without knowing you're doing it. It's in the rhythm of your day, in the way you show love, in the small quiet gestures no one else may notice, just like she did. You stand at the sink and look out the window. The yard is dark. The porch light glows faintly. The air hums with the sound of night settling in crickets, a breeze through the tree, the soft thump of a fridge cycling on and off. You imagine just for a second that she's behind you, not saying anything, just standing there, arms folded, apron on, watching. You'd ask her something simple. Was it really that hard? Did you know you were doing all that? Did it ever feel like enough? And maybe she wouldn't answer. Maybe she'd just nod, or smile, or walk past. You wipe the counter one more time and say, "Get some rest. I've got it from here." You sit down at the table. There's nothing left to do tonight. No big moment. No lesson to learn. Just you and the quiet and the echo of someone who once wore an apron, not because she had to, but because she knew what it meant to care deeply, quietly, daily. You placed your hands on the table, the same way she did, and you realize you've carried it all this time, without knowing, without trying. Her patience, her rhythm, her way of holding the world together in small ways that never needed applause. You are not just remembering her. You are becoming her. And maybe that's the point. The light above the stove dims to a soft amber. The clock ticks gently in the corner, steady and unfazed by the years. Outside, the world breathes slowly. Inside, you do the same. No more rushing, no more noise. Just the quiet reminder that love doesn't always need words. That sometimes it's a hand on a shoulder, a meal on the table, a familiar scent in the hallway. And sometimes it's an apron folded and waiting long after the work is done. You take one last deep breath, letting the memories settle around you like a warm blanket. It doesn't ache anymore. Not in the same way. It comforts. Because even though time has moved on, even though people have grown and gone, and the kitchen no longer looks the same, she is still here. In you. In the gestures you give. In the way you love without needing to be asked. The day is done now. Let the quiet wrap around you. Let the stillness hold you the way she did with care, without words, without needing anything in return. And as your eyes begin to close, as the night stretches long and gentle ahead, know this. You were always loved, and you still are. Until next time, sleep soft and dream easy.